So, hello and welcome to our September user group meeting. We are talking today about PowerShell Universal V5. So, everything that's new, everything that's already in the product. And we have Adam as a speaker today, who is inventor of Universal, and he will give us a talk today about PowerShell Universal V5. So, my name is Konstantin. My Twitter handles here, and also you can connect if you want at LinkedIn. Then I have CFPs open at Sessionize, so if you want to submit a session, please do not hesitate to do so. And I will get in contact with you. And yeah, when do you want to present? What do you want to present? I will get in contact with you, and we will work something out. The session will be recorded, so everyone has already muted the microphones. Thank you very much for this. If you have any questions, I will monitor the chat, Adam. So if anyone writes anything in the chat, I will interrupt you and ask the question. And you can also unmute your microphone if you have any questions. I think Adam won't bother, I think.
Nope, go right ahead.
Okay, good. And as already mentioned, today's speaker is Adam Driscoll, and I think he will introduce himself. And yeah, Adam, let's start. I will stop presenting, and you can take over.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being here again.
Yep, thank you for having me. All right, get my screen shared out. All right, so my name is Adam Driscoll. I founded and run a company called Iron Man Software, where we produce PowerShell Universal, which used to be called Universal Dashboard many years ago. We also produce PowerShell Pro Tools, which is now open source and available up on GitHub and in various places like the Microsoft, galleries and marketplaces and things like that. I live in the Midwest in the United States, and I'm a former PowerShell MVP. I very recently gave up that title just to kind of focus on other things, but I was a MVP for about 10 years, so I've been around the PowerShell space quite a bit. So today we're actually talking about the new version of PowerShell Universal. So late last month we released it. I think it's been out for about a month now, and PowerShell Universal kind of builds on the platform of version 4. So this new version has a whole bunch of new features that we're going to get into, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about what is PowerShell Universal before we actually kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of some of the new stuff. It's kind of made up of several different feature groups, I would say. The most popular one is our Universal App feature, and you might have seen the Universal Dashboard module up on the PowerShell Gallery, even used it. It was a PowerShell module for developing web pages with PowerShell scripts. So we have all these different PowerShell commandlets that do things like create buttons or tables or grids and that kind of thing. And then you can use that directly with your PowerShell commandlets to create interactive websites with PowerShell. So that's built into PowerShell Universal now. So if you've used that in the past, it'll be kind of a familiar experience in PowerShell Universal. You still author the applications similarly. Another big feature that people use is the web API feature. So with the web APIs, you can create RESTful HTTP endpoints and WebSocket APIs. So I'll kind of get into why that WebSocket thing is cool, because we've expanded on it in version 5. But the idea being that you can call an HTTP endpoint, and then that will invoke some PowerShell, and then you can return results back to users. And this is really helpful for interfacing with things that don't use PowerShell, because you can just call over HTTP from like a Linux curl command or something like that into your PowerShell web server that runs that PowerShell script that then interfaces with whatever you're trying to get into. Additionally, the kind of final major feature group is just the automation area inside PowerShell Universal. This is where you have your scripts and your scheduling, historical job information, and we have things like event triggers where certain things might happen inside PowerShell Universal, like a job failing or a dashboard starting, something like that, then you can send or run a job to like send an email or send a Teams message or something like that. So it works with both Windows PowerShell and PowerShell 7. So you can run scripts against either version, and we've made it even easier to actually run non-PowerShell scripts as well. So you can run something like Python scripts inside here and see the output from that. So
you can start completely for free with some limited features. Yep. So just to try it out, you can start for free. If you want something, I think you can correct me on this, authentication, SQL support, Git support, and so on, you have to buy a license.
Correct. Yep. Correct. So if you actually go to our homepage here, you'll see that we have like a little, license-free thing, and there's a lot you can do for free. Building apps and building endpoints, securing all that stuff. And yeah, what you end up paying for is mostly some of the, more fine-grained features in enterprise security, like SAML and OpenID Connect and stuff like that. So so I would say if you're interested at all, just download it and play with it, because you can do a lot of what you want to get done anyways for free. So all right, so that's kind of the spiel of PowerShell Universal, and I kind of want to jump into looking at the product and playing around with it and showing off some of the new features. So just kind of a little tour. This is what we call the admin console, and it's where you'll spend a lot of time configuring the product. It's not necessarily what you have to provide your end users. We'll kind of get into that with apps and our new portal. But this is where you'd come to configure it. On the left-hand side, you'll see those feature groups I was talking about, the APIs, the automation features, and then the app features. You'll see a couple new things in version 5, one being this portal section here. And I'll talk a little bit about the portal. We'll play with the portal. We'll look at what we can put on the portal and that kind of thing. And that's where you'd actually kind of provide that to your end user. It's a more simple UI than what you're seeing here. And then we'll dive into some of this stuff, but there's a lot of like under the hood kind of features that you can use to support what you're building inside PowerShell Universal. Things like, module management, variables that you can set that go, across all your PowerShell scripts, kind of similar to like a GitHub action or something like that. You can hook multiple PowerShell Universal instances up together and actually use a single like SQL database, and then it'll fan out those jobs, or it will load balance across apps, that kind of thing, and you can see it all in one place right here. And then other things like creating translation files and all kinds of stuff that you might want to use inside your apps or APIs. And like we talked about a little bit, there are security features that kind of encompass the entire platform. So you can set up different types of authentication mechanisms. So we support OpenID Connect, SAML2, Windows, which is single sign-on, and then WS Federation. So SAML and OpenID Connect seem to be most popular, followed by Windows. But so that just integrates in automatically, and then you can use role-based access to actually assign roles to the users logging in. And we have, some sets of built-in roles inside version 5. There's a whole new like permission system here, but then you can assign users resources based on their role. So we'll look a little bit at that as well. So I'm just going to kind of step through. Oh, sorry.
Adam, I have a short question on authentication. So it's possible to add multiple OpenID connections to make users from multiple Entra ID, or for example, Entra ID tenants authenticate against this instance, right?
It is right now. It's single OpenID Connect. We do have that.
Okay.
We have that in our roadmap. It's just not implemented yet. But we did kind of do like a cleanup and refactoring of the authentication stuff to get set up for that. So it's coming. I don't know if it's in a release milestone quite yet, but we're looking at that because people have asked. So.
Yeah, because that can be very helpful if you build something like a multi-tenant dashboard or so.
Yep.
That you can have multiple OpenID connects, and I think I saw you built the Azure.security module, I think, where you can where you can create roles based on the Entra ID groups and so on, and do the mapping automatically. So I think this will be very helpful, I think. Okay,
Yeah,
good. Then,
definitely.
thank you very much.
Yep. All right, so I'm just going to kind of step through the product. We'll play with some of the features, and we'll talk about what's new in version 5 as we do that. The first thing that you're going to see when you come in here is the new homepage. We tried to like include a lot more information without like just we had cards all over the place before, and it was kind of hard to find what you're looking for. And now we have a little bit more of a better information density is what we were calling it on the homepage. So you'll see your jobs over the last 24 hours, you know, if they're succeeding or failing. You'll see how many people are logging in. So these are like session counts to the admin console or apps, different resource counts, depending. You can, you know, have a quick view of like, okay, you know, all my scripts are here, all my apps are here. We have a health check system that runs, so it actually checks the system or the status of PowerShell Universal to see if there's issues like, you know, is the disk space running low, or is it high CPU or memory usage, and do we have conflicting modules on the system and that kind of thing.
You can also create your own ones, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit about the gallery later, and I actually added an example like health check to the gallery. So some other things you'll see here are like notifications, licensing information, the gallery, which I just talked about. And you can actually, I like this, but I don't know how many people use it, but you can dig into the actual, you know, process information of everything that's running inside PowerShell Universal. So let's play around with APIs a little bit. This is very similar to PowerShell Universal version 4, where you have a list of APIs. An API endpoint is just a place that you can call PowerShell over HTTP. And if we actually edit the code of one of these, you'll see that you can just type PowerShell commands in here and stuff like that. This is what it will execute when the endpoint is called. So what's new in PowerShell Universal 5 is we added this test feature. We had some people say, you know, they wanted something similar to like Postman. It didn't, you know, built in, so you could kind of play with your endpoint without having to go to an external tool. So in here, what you can do is you can set all different types of features of a HTTP request. So here's the URL it's going to call. You can set authentication and, you know, which role you want to simulate. You can pass in a body value. You can set headers. So I'm actually going to do that since my API is going to output those headers. And then you can set query string parameters, and then it's going to provide you with the actual code to call this. So this is the invoke REST method call you can put into a PowerShell terminal to actually call this with what I just entered into the tester. And then we have a handy invoke button where it's going to go out, invoke that API, and then return the result. And you can see here that this is kind of the information that I got from the headers variable inside my endpoint, and it just echoed it back to me as JSON, and that's kind of how it works by default. And inside your APIs, you can, you know, you have access to all kinds of stuff. You can actually set parameters in there. You can access things like the headers, the query string parameters, and you can create endpoints that are dynamic in the way that you could pass in portions of the URL. So if you did something like ID, and then if we were actually to go look at this, that ID section is actually a field that you enter. So it would be like 1, 2, 3, and you would call that similar to this. So it kind of allows you to create what I would say are RESTful APIs, and this is kind of what you would see when you use with something like a graph API or something like that. It's very similar.
And the route variable is accessible through the dollar and the name of the route variable that you
exactly.
that you specified.
Should be able to just do this, and then if I were to test that, I think that's just gonna, it just returns 1, 2, 3. Yep. So that allows you to kind of adjust your code based on that route variable.
And also a cool feature is if you provide command-based help, so like you do in PowerShell with a function or so, there is this feature of API documentation, so the open API / Swagger document, and it will get documented inside of here. So that's also a very cool feature.
Exactly. Let's actually, that was part of my, I'm going to add a couple of these. So if you add them to this API documentation feature, you create effectively a document, and then you can assign endpoints to a document. And if you actually go view this document, I don't know why it logged me out. It's loading the management API. But if I switch over to my endpoint, oh, no, not that one, this one. You'll see these are the endpoints that I added, and it automatically like generates this documentation, so you can see that I like have an ID, and you do a lot more with this than what you're seeing here. Like you were mentioning, is like you can have comment-based help, and we'll read that comment-based help and inflate the documentation with more information, and you can even add like types and stuff like that. So if you wanted to return, a user object, you could define it inside a PowerShell script, and then we can display that inside the Swagger docs. And what's cool about Swagger is you have this kind of feature where you see everything is kind of interactive. But what's really cool is it's actually built on this thing called Open API, and it generates this JSON file, which then can be consumed by generators. So Open API has a bunch of different generators that will generate, a PowerShell module for you, for example, based on this document. So pretty cool. I want to talk a little bit about event hubs because we improved them in version 5. So we've actually added support for multi-platform event hubs. We didn't really have that before. And we updated the commandlets that you use to make it easier to kind of send commands back and forth across event hubs. So what an event hub is you set up an agent on a machine somewhere, and that connects over a WebSocket back to PowerShell Universal. And then you can do server sent events from PowerShell Universal. So the idea being I can communicate with that agent somewhere, run a PowerShell command, and get some data back. And I don't necessarily need to have anything installed on that machine besides the agent, because it can use just standard PowerShell commands that are available to it. So in this example here, I actually have 2 different event hubs. It's just a placeholder for something to connect to. Effectively a grouping of agents, and then you can do things like set up authentication and role-based access to these event hubs. So then I actually didn't want to do that. And then you can make sure that they have to have an app token and that kind of thing to connect up to the event hub. In this environment, I actually have 2 different connections currently open. I have an event hub connection and a Linux connection. So one's on a Windows server and one's on a Linux server. So if we actually go over to here, like this is the Windows server that I'm running. It just has our Event Hub service installed, which is this agent, Universal Agent. And it's connected up to my PowerShell Universal instance on my local machine here. And if I were to actually go, I have a script set up, and I'll take a look at that. I have a script here, just a PowerShell script, that calls invoke PSU command, which is out of our Universal module. And I'm saying for every computer on this event hub, I want to run new item, and then I'm going to pass it these parameters. So it's going to go out, run new item. If there were 50 computers connected to this event hub, it would just go across all of those computers. And if I run that, you're not going to see any output because it just doesn't do anything unless it throws an error. But if I come over to my machine, now you can see it created that test file on my desktop. So it literally just ran new item over that WebSocket to here.
So it's like PowerShell remoting, but you don't need a direct connection. So you don't care if the server or endpoint is in your network. So you can just send it over internet, for example.
Yep, exactly. All you need. The agent just needs to be able to access the HTTP port of PowerShell Universal. So rather than it's kind of like a backwards connection a little bit. Like rather than the server connecting to the client connects back up to the server, and then we can send events back and forth. So I have another example of just the Linux Event Hub, same code, but the path's different for Linux. And I'm going to call the Linux Event Hub, and I run this, and succeeds. And if we go over to my Ubuntu box, which I don't know, hopefully I remember the password, you can see I created this test file here. And in this example, I'm just running in the PSU agent in a terminal. So you can actually download the zip file for Linux, and it includes the PSU agent process, and then you can set it up inside your Linux environments as well. So that's something new that we shipped with V5 that wasn't there. The other thing that wasn't there in V5 in terms of event hubs is we didn't have the ability to actually execute arbitrary commands like this. It used to be that you'd have to have scripts on the event hub, computer, and it was just hard to configure. So this is a little more straightforward. We do have some additional things that we want to improve in terms of sending data from agents up to PowerShell Universal, as well as surfacing agents a little bit easier in PowerShell Universal. I'll just show you an example of what I mean by it's a little difficult. So we have Event Hub. Event Hubs now can also return data from clients. They used to not be able to do it. It used to be a one-way thing. That's actually an update in the technology that Microsoft put in ASP.NET. But now you can call invoke PSU command, and it can actually return objects back to you. So I set this up before this. I didn't realize that Linux doesn't have get computer info, but this will go across all PSU Event Hubs connections that are active, and then it will effectively call that connection ID with a command. So this is one thing we want to improve. We want to make it so that you can say invoke PSU command, the name of the computer that's connected, and then the command that you want to run. But this is kind of how you do it right now. So now if I run this, it's actually going to go to pretty much everything that's connected to this PowerShell Universal instance and run get computer info. So you'll see I got the computer info back from my Windows server, but my Linux server obviously didn't because it doesn't have that commandlet. So yeah, but you can return information back from systems as well.
So, but this is treated as a normal script, so you can invoke it, for example, from a dashboard, and
yes.
Okay, I want to click a button. This script will run. This will give you the results back from the machines that are asked, and you can work with them in a normal dashboard, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is just commandlets you can call anywhere in PowerShell Universal. So
okay.
Yeah, you technically could call it outside PowerShell Universal if you had the app tokens, set up and everything. So yeah, so that's kind of the new features of the event hubs, which I think we're slowly renaming them to agents. Like it used to be the event hub client, and once we renamed it to agent, people were like, "Oh, it's an agent." So I think that as we evolve this feature, it'll become more clear that they're just agents. Eventually, you want to make it so that we can have things like scripts. Like you could have this, and you could select the computer and run it from the PowerShell Universal instance. Because right now, the way that PowerShell Universal works is you need an entire PowerShell Universal server to actually scale out the script execution stuff. But we want to make it so that you can just install a little agent, and then you could have script runners that don't need database access or anything. They just need to be able to talk to PowerShell Universal. So that is in the works. I want to talk a little bit about our script updates. So with scripts, they're just scripts. So like you saw me run a couple scripts here. It's just PowerShell code that I put inside here. And so for the most part, this is very similar to what you'll see in version 4 if you install it. We've added a couple little nice to have features, including creating scripts from commands. So historically, what you'd need is a PS1 file that you add to PowerShell Universal. But now what you can do is you can actually create a script from a command like this one right here. So this comes out of the local accounts module, and it's just a call to new local user. So if you're actually to open this up, actually I don't know, I might not have this one because there's a problem with new local user that's broken in PowerShell 7 if you have tried to use it recently. So that's actually kind of a bad example, but it'll find like parameters and stuff like that, similar to what you would see in a script here.
So is it like a proxy command? So is it like the proxy command technique that you can use in PowerShell, or what's?
It's just calling it directly. Yeah, it doesn't actually even use. Yeah, it doesn't even use a proxy command or anything.
Okay.
But
it's
mostly us just servicing it in the UI, and so you don't have to actually have PS1s if you don't need to.
Okay.
Because what people were doing was they would create a new local user script, and it would just call new local user. So removing that step.
Okay.
And one thing you'll notice a lot in PowerShell Universal V5 is the gallery. So things like this will pop up. Like this was provided by a module that we imported from the gallery. So I'll talk a little bit about the gallery in a little bit, but that's where that came from. So a couple things that we added inside V5 include quick run, which it doesn't take you anywhere. You can just click it because typically when you run a script, it like brings up this dialog, you enter some stuff, you click run, it takes you to the jobs page, but now quick run just runs it, and as long as it doesn't have mandatory parameters you need to enter, you can just quick run it. We also added script documentation. So this is just a markdown file that you can include with your script for additional documentation. Inside the admin console, it's not obvious, super obvious. It's like you can click it and see it and stuff like that, but I'll show you in the portal in just a second. We use that to actually add it to the portal. So if we actually look inside here, you'll see that we just have a documentation tab that allows you to enter arbitrary markdown, and then we render it as HTML.
Is there a plan to, I just thinking about some persons, is there a plan to include a WYSIWYG editor? So a what you see is what you get editor with the documentation for people who can't write Markdown fluently?
I haven't even asked that, and there isn't a plan, but it's something we could consider. I'm sure there are, components we could add that would just do that for us.
Or just add some snippets or so to the editor. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, definitely possible.
Mm-hmm.
So this is standard like PowerShell Universal behavior. This was what PowerShell Universal V4 did, is if you add these parameters in here, including things like mandatory and help message and stuff, it will create a UI for you. So it's not the best way to present to a user necessarily, because in V4 there was no portal, and you'd have to come to the admin console, find the script you're going to run. There's a lot of options that may not matter to an end user. So I'll show you what the portal looks like for scripts now, because the portal is a new feature that we added, and the idea is that the portal is just super simple UI. So it's still kind of in preview, so we're trying to get feedback from our customers to see what's important inside the portal. But now you can surface things from PowerShell Universal, put them on the portal, and the user can just I want to search for the app, and then they can find their app. So that's kind of the idea. And you can see you can surface scripts here. So if I open that script that I was just looking at, it has a much simpler UI and user experience. So the script name, this is that markdown that we added, and it just adds it to the top, and it creates a UI that the user could enter stuff in. Oh, I didn't put this one as a secure string. And then you can submit it, and it will go out and run it. And depending on this script didn't return anything, but depending on how you or what you run, it will actually output a table or text depending on how your script is configured. So you can actually set those settings inside the PowerShell Universal portal tab here. So you can do things like, I don't want any output, I just want text output, which is what you would see in the admin console. We've also added table output. So if you add like an array of objects that come back, it will create a table based on that data. Additionally, the role you assign here is who gets to see this script in their portal. So I just assigned it to my admin role, but you could put other roles in there, that kind of thing. And that's why none of these other scripts show up in the portal, is because they don't have a role assigned. So let's see, I'm just trying to think if there's anything I want to talk about aside from that. I think just on general, like PowerShell Universal, a level. A lot of this is similar from V4. We've added some better customization of the jobs table. You can see here that you can actually hide certain columns and add columns and that kind of thing, just to make it easier to find what job actually ran. Aside from that, very similar to V4. And then we just have, this is kind of the example of an output of PowerShell scripts in PowerShell Universal. So you get a lot of information about where it ran and when it ran, how long it took to run. And one thing that's actually kind of cool is we actually store the pipeline output. So if you're actually creating scripts that, call other scripts and that kind of thing, you can actually get that back from the database. So if you, for example, wanted to see what the output of script PS1 was in another PowerShell script and use that data to do something else, we actually serialize it as CLI XML inside the database, so you have access to that. Additionally, there are things like the parameters that we pass in and that kind of thing. So, there's a scheduling component. We did do a little bit of work here, mostly just UI stuff. We have some basic schedules that you can create. A simple schedule is just you literally select from this, and then you can say every day, I want to do this, or specific days of the week, I want to do this at this time. And what it ends up doing is it just generates the cron schedule for you. So if I were to have a schedule like this, and then I were to, it really matters, create this schedule. I don't know why that didn't show up. And then you can see there is a persistent schedule that runs, a persistent cache script that runs every minute. So that's what the simple schedule is. That's a new button in V5. But aside from that, these are the same scheduling options as in V4. So a continuous schedule is a schedule that just runs, and then it waits a certain number of seconds, and then it runs again. And a one-time schedule is pretty self-explanatory. It just runs one time in the future. So yeah, so we did do a little work there. There's been some behind-the-scenes technical stuff too, but mostly just UI stuff. Terminals and triggers didn't change too much. Terminals are literally PowerShell terminals that you can create and run commands in. People usually use them for debugging. We don't see a lot of use, but we want to continue to include that feature because it's pretty handy to have. And then triggers are events that happen inside PowerShell Universal. So a health check is failing, a job is canceled or completed or something like that. And then you can run a script based on that, and it's going to receive some information about what happened, and then you can do with it what you will. And I'll talk a little bit when I show the gallery. I've actually added a trigger for sending an email, for example, for jobs. All right, so I'm going to talk about apps. Honestly, apps have not changed that much in PowerShell version 5. We kind of left them alone. We spend a lot of time on the admin console and a lot of time, working through a lot of that other stuff and some, internal technical stuff that we've done around permissions and everything. But apps themselves have kind of been the same. So an app is what used to be known as Universal Dashboard. So if you actually look at the app code, it's very similar to what you would have seen in a Universal Dashboard app. And the idea is that you just have PowerShell script that you can create applications with, web applications with. So in this example, I have a new app, and I'm adding a data grid to it with some arbitrary data, and I'm adding a couple columns to that data grid. So if I were to actually go and view this app, you can see this is what it looks like. So this is where I'd say primarily our customers are using this to display data and let their end users interact with PowerShell Universal is through web UIs like this. We actually have a really extensive forum post where I just ask people like, hey, can you give me some real world examples? And people have built some crazy stuff, more than I could have ever imagined with this app framework. So we actually do have built-in live documentation. So this was actually in version 4 as well. This is actually an app all built with PowerShell script, and it's actually built from the comment-based help in the Universal module. So if you were to actually look at, for example, this form here, I can, enter stuff in my form and submit it, and it's going to be interactive and everything like that. And these are just coming out of the examples inside the comment-based help, and then we just generate the whole documentation or live doc from those comment-based help examples. So I don't remember the count on our controls right now, but it's somewhere around like 70 or 75 controls. So you can pretty much do anything you can think of in terms of building out a UI. So we have autocompletes and buttons and checkboxes, anything you want to put in a form, even things like rating controls. And we also have charts. So if you wanted to render something in a chart.js chart, those are integrated along with Nevo charts, which is kind of more, I don't know, it's a slick chart system, but it's a little harder to work with. And yeah, tables. I did show off the data grid. The table is a little simplified form or version of the data grid. The data grid is really built for large data sets. Kind of the way it works is it's mostly built so that you do all the querying against like a SQL database or something like that on the back end, and you don't have to load all the data into PowerShell Universal just to display it. So that's kind of what the data grid's for. It also does have some features that the table doesn't, which include things like editing. So you can actually go out and create kind of like an Excel-like editor inside your dashboards. So not only can you like interface with all these controls, but as you can see, I've kind of been interacting with it, and it's been doing things, which means that we have a bunch of like interactive commandlets. So we have a lot of these interaction commandlets for doing things like adding elements dynamically. So as you can imagine, a user clicks a button, you go out, load some data from a database, render a chart or something like that. So you can do things where you add things to the the dashboard on the fly, and there's just like a bunch of other little things you can do, like copying things to the clipboard or like downloading files, depending on. And yeah, so it also interacts with the PowerShell host a little bit. So if you do things even outside of like our commandlets, like for example read host, it will pop up a little dialog for you to enter that read host value. Or write progress, it'll show you a little progress bar on the lower left-hand side. So yeah, so there's like a lot you can do with apps, and I think that it's still like, yeah, the very, the most popular feature, just because it's really fun and you can be really creative, and you can actually build stuff pretty quickly because it's all PowerShell script. There's no like Markdown and PowerShell script or like, HTML and CSS and JavaScript. It's just PowerShell. So what I have been doing, I'll talk a little bit about the gallery, is I have been spending some time with our gallery. In PowerShell Universal V5, this is a new feature, is the PowerShell Universal Gallery. And it is a collection of PowerShell modules that are kind of specific to PowerShell Universal. So I've been building out some stuff that you can add, like file system app components, for example. If you actually go out to GitHub, you'll see a bunch of information about this. So it adds a new function or command line, whatever you want to call it, to PowerShell Universal that you can call inside your apps to add more specific components. Because as you saw, as I was kind of going through that documentation, it was all like, a button, and it wasn't like a solution. So that's what I've been adding to the gallery is solutions like this, where you could have a file system browser. You select a published folder inside your PowerShell Universal instance, and it creates a file system browser for you. So not only is that kind of cool because you can add new components without having to write them, it also serves as examples. So if you want to see how I did that, out on the gallery, there is the source for this. And if you actually click on any one of these inside PowerShell Universal, it's going to take you out to GitHub to learn more about it. We also have, we have the gallery.
Adam, is there a documentation already available on how to write this from scratch? Is there any template or so, or because I'm also interested in writing one, so
yeah,
for myself.
So this is, we have the documentation on the repository itself. So and really, if you crack one of these open, you'll see it's just a PowerShell module, but we do have a couple specific things that you. Actually, this is one of them is I don't know. I've trimmed some of these, but the only thing you really need to do is provide the correct URLs so that for example, when you click this gallery button, it actually goes back to the right location and stuff like that. And then the tagging system, we ask that you add things like script, app, or like trigger, that kind of thing, because we have filters inside PowerShell Universal that use those tags to actually allow you to filter for things. So, and then we actually have this website on our PowerShellUniversal.com website that takes that gallery repository and renders it, so you can actually click on things and it'll take all the the information from the README, for example, and put it on this website. And we tried to format it to make it look as close to the the PowerShell gallery as we could. So, yeah. So I would say it's actually not very stringent rules. It's mostly that we just use this one place to get all that information. So you'd have to put a pull request into here. So, yeah, but it's all open source and loosely licensed. Nice. So yeah.
So is it planned or is it already possible to not to create a local gallery, but that's because for some use cases we can't make it open source because we have our own implementation or so. Is it possible to host it locally and make it also available into the gallery, or do I have to file copy it then to the right folder inside of Universal?
So the way this works right now, there's kind of two different ways that you could go about that. To actually make it show up in this gallery page, there's actually a location that we store the gallery in, and we download the entire gallery into that page, which is fine right now because it doesn't, it's not that big. Okay. But we have this library directory, and you can see it's just a bunch of NuGet files. So
okay,
you could do the exact same thing, and PowerShell Universal would just look at that, and it would populate this with that stuff. So yeah, so you could, and that's kind of the way it works right now. The other thing that we've done is, which isn't totally hooked up into PowerShell Universal yet, is that we actually have a NuGet feed up. So if you go to gallery.powershelluniversal.com and you're actually look at this JSON, you can see it's a version 3 NuGet feed, and you could set up in this module section here, if you actually look at this repository, this is actually just calling get PS resource repository to populate that dropdown. So if you registered a new resource repository here, it would surface it there, and then you could install stuff through here. So the gallery is just honestly a little bit of UI over this functionality. So
okay.
Yeah. So all this is doing is installing a module, and that's all this is doing. If you were to go out and search the gallery for something, you would just install it into this environment. I don't know why this is disabled. Yeah. So yeah, that's a little bit about the gallery. I'm trying to seed it a little bit to see if I can get other people to contribute, but I think we have 26 modules right now. But whenever I have a little free time, what I'll do is I'll go and build some example or something for for example, that you saw the Azure security stuff. It's not a very complicated script, but if you don't know PowerShell Universal, it might take you a while to figure that out. So that's just, what I'm trying to do is provide examples of how to get that going. And, hopefully someone will be able to use this in their environment, which by setting a couple variables, and then, then they have all the roles for their groups. So, yeah. Okay, I am going to talk a little bit about the portal now. So we saw the portal kind of in action. Obviously, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Like, you can, not only can you do scripts, but you can do things like it'll open the API documentation for you if you have it assigned. It'll open apps for you if you have those assigned. And then what we have are portal pages. So portal pages are pages that just go inside the portal. The idea is it's like a simpler version of an app. And the other idea is that, similar to what I'm doing with, or also included in the gallery, are widgets that you can add to your portal page. So I'm just going to show you a little what that means. Is we have two things in here, one being widgets and one being pages. Pages are containers for widgets. It's what you assign to the user. So I created a custom portal page and a local user's portal page. And if we actually look at one of those from an administrator perspective, you'll notice this edit button at the bottom here. If I click that, all of a sudden it's going to kind of turn into like a GUI editor where you can set like properties on the widget. You can move the widget around. You can delete the widget, and then you save the widget. And you can add new widgets to the portal page. So it is a more UI-focused way of generating UIs in PowerShell. And my vision here would be that we'd have a lot of widgets that you could use from the gallery, add them without having to do any coding whatsoever. And then, for example, this local users table here is a widget that you can get from the gallery, and it just displays local users calling the get local user commandlet. So, and what you'll notice in here is that we have this widget section where it's going to show you all the widgets that are defined in your environment. So I installed the local user or local accounts widget module, and it added all these different widgets like the local user and group and new local user. But I've also added my own custom one. So behind the scenes, kind of the way that this works is we are allowing you to effectively extend the PowerShell Universal admin console by using the same controls that we use to build the admin console, but you can do it kind of a combination of XML and PowerShell. So if we look at this code editor, you'll see on the left-hand side we have a Razor tab here, and Razor is the kind of the language of ASP.NET for generating UIs. It's similar to like WPF or something like that, where you define how it looks in the XML and how it behaves in the code behind. So here you'll see that I'm defining this table with a couple columns in it, one being name, status, and then an action column that allows me to do something. So I've added a button that is going to actually call a PowerShell function when I click it. I'm also doing things like using PowerShell variables. So I have this services variable, which I'll show you in a sec how I set that. And then I have a context variable, which is for each row, pretty much, I want to display the status in an alert. So these components are coming from the PowerShell Universal Admin Console libraries that we're using. So you can actually interface with that. So if we look at the PowerShell side of things, it's pretty simple. It's just I am populating a variables hash table with services, and that's how I use it in Razor. I'm calling get service, and then I'm defining a function called show status, and it's accepting a context, and then I'm displaying the message. So again, this is like for each row, I want to show the status in a message box. So we have a couple services that you can look at our documentation, like message service or a JavaScript service, that kind of thing. And then they're interactive. So now you can see that I'm just interacting with this table here that I've defined with those tidbits of code. And then kind of like coming full circle, you can add those to pages. So now this is an example of what it would look like if I added that widget to a page. So I I don't foresee a lot of people building widgets, but I foresee us building widgets, especially ways to quickly add things to the portal for users to like do UI things without having to build apps. The idea was that we wanted something that was kind of using the same technology as the rest of our UI frameworks, leave the app stuff alone, and kind of build this on top of our new PowerShell Universal Admin Console and portal. So it's all one UI framework pretty much.
So I think the technology is called, I think, Blazor. So you built the admin portal around Blazor. Can you still elaborate on what Blazor actually is and
Sure.
why you choose the framework? Also?
Yeah. So this admin console, while it looks very similar to the version 4 admin console, this is a completely rebuilt admin console using Microsoft's Blazor technology, which is part of ASP.NET Core. It actually uses the same JavaScript library to render this. So we use what's called Ant Design. They have primarily a React JavaScript framework for building UIs just like this, and that's what we used in PowerShell Universal V4 and earlier, was all React. But the app stuff, so for example, this stuff here is also a React app. So we have 2 different React apps using 2 different libraries. So it was a bad decision made long ago. But we chose to use Blazor because it allowed us to kind of move away from that. What's cool about Blazor is that you write everything in C# or .NET, and then very similar to what I was showing with the widgets, you use this XML syntax to define the UI. And you can kind of intersperse C# into the XML syntax and that kind of thing. And it makes it way easier to build something like this. And it's tightly coupled to our models. So for example, like we have objects that float around like an endpoint object or, an app object. And rather than having to like define all these app objects inside C# and then define them again in JavaScript and then, wrap all this stuff in like HTTP controllers and stuff like that, it simplifies all of that. And the way that Blazor works is it's actually it's generating the HTML and CSS and stuff, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and sending it down to the browser. And depending on how you run it, it works in 2 different ways. What we're using is called Blazor Server, which uses a WebSocket connection in between the browser and the server, similar to what you are actually using in Event Hubs here. And that's how all the interactions happen. So every time I click on something, it sends something to the server, opens this window, sends something back, and it's just calling C#, and it's kind of seamless from our perspective. The other way you can run this is using WebAssembly, where it'll download the C# binaries into the browser and run them in the browser. So you get away from a lot of the JavaScript actually running. It's mostly just running C# directly in the browser. But there are downsides to that as well. But so yeah, that's why I did it. It was a very big technical decision. It was not necessarily because we wanted to rewrite the admin console. It was we're going to make this big lift now so that we can reduce our technical overhead later on, kind of thing. So
okay.
Yep.
But, and you are not planning to move the apps to also the Blazor technology? So because apps, I think, if you understand it correctly, it's at the moment it's built on React, I think.
Yep.
But are there any plans to translate them also to Blazor so that you only have to write one language or to support one language?
I think at this time, no, just because I think the risk of breaking changes, especially with how flexible apps are, is pretty dangerous to attempt to do that. The other thing is that we're to the point where it's the app framework is pretty stable. We're not adding huge crazy changes to it or anything like that. We're tweaking a component here or there, adding some new features, maybe adding a new component. So the overall technical load is not that high on that. So that's why there isn't an effort.
Okay.
The portal widget kind of concept was our like concept of like, okay, let's not rewrite apps. Like that's gonna go badly. Let's provide a different way for people to create UI that is maybe simpler than having to always write an app kind of thing. So I don't know. That's one reason too that we're kind of leaving the portal stuff in preview. Like I don't think we're gonna ever get rid of this stuff, but how much we invest into it will depend on user feedback. So
Okay.
I think people already really like the portal for how simple it is to add scripts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't have a sense that people are using widgets and pages at the moment. So
okay. Yeah, because I see it totally as a use case that the user logs on to the portal and the admin can say, okay, let's show them this app and show them this script and click, and everything is finished. So that's I think also a use case, or the main use case, I think.
Yeah, totally. I think that was the original, like we weren't even going to add a lot to that portal and it just kind of evolved. The original idea was just to have scripts. Like you would just have, a script. I think it's easy. It was easy to add these kind of things. They're effectively just links to different places. But having a simple thing that just displayed a script was really important. So
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the script piece is I think more important because like you mentioned before that we as admins don't have to give a normal user access to the admin console and explain them, if this is yellow above in the right corner, you have to click on this and then type in something and so on. And then the end user say, are you crazy? No.
They'll just never use it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a really cool feature of the portal stuff.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. So it's kind of like the portal stuff. We did add like a couple other little things in here that what's the timeline on this? Should I keep going for a little bit or should I have
if you want to? So we have time till 9 o'clock. So you can talk for 1 hour, but
okay.
Do we have any questions from the audience? I don't want to moderate on my own. What's the thought of the product at the moment? Have any opinions or any feedback, any questions that you want Adam to answer or to know about? No one. Okay, perfect. Then you definitely can continue.
All right. So I'll talk about just a couple of little things that we added. One is people wanted a way to store data that persisted without having to like necessarily create a database table and everything like that. So I think we went like halfway there, and that is we have a persistent cache now. So the idea is that you can set a cache key. It actually stores this in the database. It takes whatever data you pass into it and stores it as CLI XML. So that's again like what you would see over a remoting channel or something like that. And you'll see all kinds of information about that cache data. For example, when it was created, updated, or last read. And you can set things like expiration, sliding expiration, and absolute expirations for that data. So it'll actually purge them from the cache if you want that to happen. If you don't define that, it's just going to leave it inside there. What's nice about this is not only does it cache that data across restarts of the service, it is also centralized. So if you're using SQL Server, all the servers in the cluster could access this persistent data. And we made it real simple. We had a pre-existing set PSU cache commandlet, and now we just added persist onto it. And there's a whole bunch of plumbing, obviously, in the background, but from a user perspective, it was just like you just put persist on there. It's going to put it into the database, and then anyone can access it across the platform. And I think I have an example of doing so. So here I'm just calling get PSU cache. So it's going out to get that persistent value. And then I'm returning it from my endpoint. And you can see that it just went into the database, grabbed that value, and returned it back to the client. So typically what we see users doing here is they will have a script that runs on a schedule that caches some data. It might be AD groups or anything that takes a long time to look up. And then they use that across their scripts or their APIs or their apps. And it'll just populate that. Yeah.
But that's not the same like the new UD endpoint, right? So there is a script. There is a commandlet. It's called, I think, new UD endpoint.
Oh yeah, like an
where
app.
you can define a recurring schedule to, for example, put it in the $cash variable to use it in a app to have something like a cache. So that's not the thing.
Right.
I think,
no,
right?
Because we have multiple different kinds of, like, I would say cache states. But there's $cache, which you can use in apps. And what this does is it's in memory. So this is just it's effectively a global variable that you can store everything in, and that just goes across the entire app. And that's what you're using. And then yes, if you had like a new UD endpoint in here, you could set up the schedule on it and then set that cache. You can use get PSU cache in here though. So we do call that like the server level cache, because get PSU cache is stored either in the database or in the server's memory. So it goes across apps. So if you have multiple apps and you want to cache something across all those apps, you would use this. So
So I have a project where I cache my info that is coming from the database every 5 minutes or so, so that I only so that I don't have to live pull data from my live database, but just pull it from the cache to save some rendering time and so on. So that's I think a good mechanism for using the new UD endpoint. I think.
Yeah.
Use it some like a Redis cache or so.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was added. That was new. One other thing I want to talk about is we have a new. I would say, like, we redid the security model for PowerShell Universal as a whole, and what we did is we actually we created the same roles that you'd see in PowerShell version 4. We did add a bunch of more roles, and we were able to do that because of this new permission system that we put in. So kind of similar to what you would see in like Azure or something like that. Permissions are actually defined as these little identifiers. So you can see like APIs /star means read, write, execute permissions for all API features. And then various sections of the admin console or management API will have these identifiers applied. And if you actually look at something a little more specific, like API editor has access only to APIs, and API reader only has API read access. So you can assign those roles to users, and it will actually hide a whole bunch of the admin console and make it so they can't access, anything except what you've assigned to them. We had a similar concept in V4 called access controls, but it really only applied to scripts. This actually goes through the entire platform. So not only is it in the admin console, it's also if you call our management REST APIs and our PowerShell module. We'll use all the same permissions. And you can create your own roles with these permissions, and you can also assign permissions directly to users. So if you were to actually select a user, you could select the resource that you want to provide access to, and then you can define like what kind of access you want to grant to that user. So it's been working really well so far, just because we had like these two different kind of authentication mechanisms before, and now having one has like simplified things on our end a little bit and made it a lot more powerful. It's also made things a little more stringent in terms of permissions inside PowerShell Universal V5. So one of the difficulties people have had upgrading is that there is more security in place now. So we've had to add some settings to actually make it so that people can reduce their security while they like reevaluate what they want to do in terms of how to apply this to their users, or if to apply it. So I would say that's the one big issue that people have had during upgrade was because we have so many more permissions and stuff like that, some of the scripts wouldn't work out of the box because of that. So, but yeah, we effectively have introduced a revert to v4 feature so that it turns off some of that permission stuff internally. So,
also a cool stuff. I have another question. So, I was asked at a PSConf when I gave my dev container session. So what I didn't mention in the talk, but I think it's worth mentioning. So you don't have to code inside of the website. So you can use a Visual Studio Code extension, which is called, I think it's called PowerShell Universal, where you can, if you create a token beforehand, put that inside of the settings, inside of Visual Studio Code, and then you can connect over the token with your Visual Studio Code. So that's totally doable. But I had a talk where I mentioned the dev container stuff, and inside of the dev container you have a chance to provide these settings beforehand. So if you build the dev container, you are not having an app token and you can't use the universal extension. So is there a way to, for example, beforehand provide what's called like a standard app token that you provide in every session where it can use beforehand, or connect to the universal without an app token to get an app token, or what would your solution on this? Because I had to say, okay, I cheated a little bit. I started Universal, I create an app token, stopped the dev container, put it into the settings, and then start the dev container, and then then it would work. Is there a better solution for this, or?
I think so. In the dev container, PowerShell Universal is running, and then you have VS Code in there. Is what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. Right. So I start the dev container, so it works together with VS Code, and I can provide what extension to have inside of the container and what settings can I have in the container, and you can have the settings defined beforehand, and I don't have a token beforehand, so I have to go inside of Universal and create a token. So is there some kind of mechanism to retrieve a token without having a token? That's a bit I think it's a bit of a silly question, but is there a solution for this that you can, for example, provide what is called a standard token to have in every container that we can use this for this use case, or
I'm trying. It is like a little chicken and the egg, but there's probably a way we could like script around it. Like I don't know enough about dev containers to give you like a perfect answer, but there are ways that you can like log in with a web request and request a token.
Okay.
That's definitely possible, and then you could install that. I don't also know where like the settings for the dev container are installed, but like as a dev container starts up, it could go log in, request a token, and store that token, sort of thing. Would be one way to do it. But yeah, I would have to play around with it like to figure out exactly how to do that. But let me take a note of that, and I'll see what I can do.
If you need help, I can provide you the GitHub repo for my talk, that you have a starting point, that you don't have to write your own dev container and so on. So,
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, if you have that, just send it my way, and I'll take a look.
I will paste it in the chat right now because I have it on hand, so that you can start with this. So check, where is it? PSU, this one it is. Yes, I have two projects in here. So I provided in my talk, I provided a way to have a single container running, so that's just Universal. And in the second, I provided a Docker Compose file where you can use the SQL container and the Universal container and link them both together to and also to provide a license, because that's a license-only feature. So that would be great if you maybe get back to me or write a blog post or so how to use it. Because, for example, Rob Sewell asked about it because he's also interested in using Universal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's what I did is a bit of cheating, but yeah.
Yeah, it'd be good if it was all automated, right?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
very great. Yeah. So yeah, because in dev containers you have the chance to provide a post command or a pre command, and your if you have a PowerShell script, you only have to change a JSON file. So because the dev container is provided in inside of a JSON file, so you could run a PowerShell script and change the JSON declaration. So that could be a possibility. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. I'll have to take a look because definitely possible. Yeah. Just how to get there. One thing I just realized in V4 you used to be able to. We'll probably have to add this back, but you used to be able to come into this app token page and click connect to VS Code. I don't think that would work for a dev container, but
no, definitely not. Yeah.
it would automatically send a token down to the PowerShell Universal extension and configure itself. So, but yeah, right now it's just you still need to paste it in here.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Adam?
I think that is kind of the end of my content. I'd be happy to show anything else if you're curious. Otherwise, yeah.
Could you get briefly over, that is what I always struggle with, the debugging feature of Universal. So that you can debug a page or an app or so. Because I think it's possible, right?
In 4 it had like an integrated debugger. It's actually something here. Let me try something once. I'll show you what I did here. Let's see. Processes equals get process wait debugger. So this is what we added in scripts in V5. I think it'll. Is it not? One sec. Am I lying? Where's that status?
I think I saw you do this in a demo, I think.
Yeah, I don't know why. I did. I made a video on this, and now I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm also running it off a debugger.
Okay, yeah. That's maybe because it's not working yet.
Yeah, I mean, I could try something like. I just don't know why that wouldn't. Because it's what we're kind of considering for apps too. But I seem to have broken something. The idea would be that you could come into apps, you could set a breakpoint in here, and then we would have another tab where you could click, it would open up that terminal, and you could, effectively run whatever you want in that breakpoint. Just because we had this whole thing where you could go into like things like platform debugging, and you could have to find the thing, and I don't know. I just wanted to be more inline rather than having to go and run it.
So the thing that's implemented inside of the VS Code extension is also not working at the moment, or?
That's
because
a
I
good
think you can see I think you are able to see the run space behind it and can go directly inside of it, right?
Oh yeah. Let's see if that works.
Here we have an in breakpoint. Okay, let's see.
Does that work? Let's see. Get here. I don't think this is in the debugger though. I actually haven't tried this on version 5. No, that's in VS Code still. But where? Oh wait. No.
I think we are.
It thinks it's in the debugger.
Yeah, but okay, good.
Yeah.
So maybe I think there should be some polishing.
Yeah.
I think in the extension.
Because the other thing, I know. Let me think about this. Yeah, I'll have to check that extension because I know what you're talking about now. We actually integrated PowerShell editor services into
Right.
PowerShell Universal.
Yeah.
But I'm just like I haven't used it in a while, and I can't remember if you need to enable something.
Okay.
And that might be the problem. I'll have to look at that. But yes,
Yeah.
that is true. You can hook the debugger up to it remotely, and it will actually communicate over a WebSocket to PowerShell editor services running in a process behind PowerShell Universal. So, but yeah, I don't know what's. It looks like it's trying to connect, but
yeah. So, so I just wanted to know if this is still possible, but yeah, if it's not working at the moment, then I think you can definitely look into this and fix it. So.
Yeah, I will take a look because I almost like forgot that existed.
Okay, perfect.
But yeah, I mean that it was really powerful because then you could just it would load up your script. You would have your variables and everything like that. But as you can see, it's just not behaving.
And also, I pasted Adam's YouTube channel into the chat because that's the place where he he posted all his videos about Universal and some other stuff. I think this is a very good resource to check out if you have any questions around Universal. They are very short, so it's video about one topic. I think the last was what was it? The last one, inline script debugging. Yeah, it was the last one. Yeah,
it's literally that.
So
oh, there we go. That worked.
Maybe that worked. Nice, good.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of cool.
Perfect. Yeah, and some production. That's also a really cool video about the production development environments. So you showed us where with the zip deployment that you can deploy very, very quickly a production and a development environment with Universal and test everything. So that's also a cool video to check out. So
yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've been trying to touch on as much 5.0 stuff as I can, and I'll keep adding videos here and there. So
yeah, definitely. So just for do we have where should people ask questions if they have any questions about Universal? What's
go to our forums?
Okay.
And yeah, very active here. So I would say definitely go check this out. The other place that is big is our GitHub repository here is PowerShell Universal. It doesn't really have any code. It's just an issue tracker. So if you're looking for anything, definitely check this out. And you can see our roadmap. So upcoming releases, bug fixes that are in the works, and that kind of thing. So definitely check that out too. Yeah, so those are the two places that I would suggest to go. And all our docs are up on docs.powershelluniversal.com. So we have a lot of extensive documentation. So yeah, definitely check that out.
You also have the chance to go back to the version you prefer because that's I think the standard is V5. You can go to V4, and I hope not to be 1, but
I haven't seen anyone running 1 for a while. Every once in a while, I'll see someone running like 3, but.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's very extensible help. I see a lot of value in this, and also I use the docs feature that you have this interactive help now, where you can quickly see examples of, for example, an autocomplete and so on. What I think would be a feature request for this. Could you implement search inside of the docs dynamic generated thing?
Yeah, there's actually GitHub issue for that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I just haven't got around to it.
Okay.
But yes, yep. Other people want that too.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Good. So I look in the audience. Do you have any questions for Adam?
Which kind of database is behind the PowerShell Universal?
So we actually have 3 options for databases. By default, it's going to use SQLite, just to like a single file SQL database. So you don't need a server installed, but you can also use MS SQL, Microsoft SQL, and PostgreSQL. So whatever you need is kind of there. So, and it does support Azure SQL too, so you can use a hosted version too.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but for this you have to be licensed. So I think Postgres and MS SQL I think are licensed features, right?
Yep, exactly. SQLite is the free one.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Adam.
I think about the using of an API server. We have an internal portal where we would like to create infrastructure such as Hyper-V hosts to deploy or to patch this Windows host with the Hyper-V. I think it should be possible with the PowerShell Universal API that I can start the request from the internal portal to the PowerShell Universal, and the PowerShell Universal will execute the PowerShell code locally. Is this true?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can actually use the API to start scripts. So that's what a lot of people do is from the API, you could have it call it, and then you could do something like invoke PSU script, and it could be, new Hyper-V host.ps1 or something like that. And what's nice about that is it actually will then show up in the job log. So you'll actually see it, with all the information about creating that Hyper-V host, for example.
And there's also a, so I think if you want to integrate it also in a dashboard, there's also this wait PSU script, for example, and also the receive PSU script, I think. So you can receive the return values if you have something and display them in a table or so. So that's also I used that in the dashboard once. Was really helpful. Just while you're saying the invoke PSU scripts, do you have any timeouts specified on APIs? So, for example, if the script is running 3 hours, do you have any problems with this kind of time limit or timeout or so?
You can set a timeout on the API itself.
Okay.
If you set it to 0, it's going to be no timeout. Typically, what I recommend for people is just not to have long-running things inside their APIs. As much as you can, I would have an API that starts something and then another API that checks the status. So I realize that's not always possible depending on what's calling the API, but I think that's a better architecture because then you just don't have all these really long-running HTTP requests that build up. So.
So maybe it would be better than to create a script and trigger the API from the script and start the script automatically through the commandlets. That could also, I think, be a possibility. I think. I don't know the correct architecture from Martin, so that depends. I think.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? And I think Adam mentioned that before. I think the forum post for the use cases. I think I saw a Hyper-V creation dashboard. I think inside of this. I think so. Someone built already something I think internally to this. I don't know on which page it was, but yeah.
Might be on here. Looks like this guy VM
Yeah,
deployment.
there it is. Yes, something like this. So
yeah.
But I think you mentioned, Martin, that there you have a completely different system to create the VMs. You only need to initiate the deployment, right?
We would deploy the host and not the VM.
Okay.
With API.
Okay.
Or we would like to do some internal maintenance over API.
So I think this should work. So if you can authenticate to this thing and know the API, then I think you can work with it inside of PowerShell Universal. I think it should work. Any other questions or comments or so for Adam?
Yeah, maybe one. Have you any plans to integrate PS DuckDB? DuckDB seems to hype at the moment. Next week we will have a talk in the PSU Hanover. And have you played with it or so?
I've only seen it in passing. I actually haven't really looked into it. But we are looking at integrating into other PowerShell things. For example, tester testing was one thing that people really wanted to be like, have like a UI built around tester testing. You know, we integrate with PS Script Analyzer, so like another thing that's like very PowerShell specific like that might be a good candidate for integrating with the PowerShell Universal. So I'll look into it.
Thank you.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Because there's only you in Hanover, you would look, you check out PS DuckDB, right? The PowerShell module, I think. Yeah, that Duckfink wrote. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll just have it open on GitHub on the other side. Okay.
I think Holger. I think Holger will talk about it next Friday.
Okay. Yeah, this is the module from him.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite seamless integration with DuckDB, enabling efficient execution of any SQL queries directly from this PowerShell environment. Oh, interesting.
I haven't played around with it, but I have read some articles about it, and it seems very interesting. So I'm quite interested in next Friday what it is. So.
Any other questions, comments, feedback for Adam? Okay. Good. If you don't have any other questions, then I think we can. Okay. Thanks for the demo. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Then I was talking to but also thank you for being here. Sorry. Thank you for being here, and if you maybe so I was thinking about but maybe I will think too big, but would it be possible, or could it be possible that we have another meeting next year or so, beginning of next year, where we do some kind of live coding, a universal dashboard together? So that we can say, okay, we think of a use case like a PC monitoring system or so, where we monitor our own system. Say, okay, what's the processes, what's the live view of the processor, and so on. That we can check out what Universal is doing. So like a real use case, and I prepare something, you prepare something, so that we can split up the work and so on, and then the people can ask questions. So I think so. I saw some thumbs up and so on. So maybe I think this could be interesting, because I also talked to Chrissy Lemaire. I think you know her, and she gave a talk about AI and PowerShell Universal, because PowerShell Universal is such a learning curve. So because because you have to know, okay, I use this technique to do this and to hide this button and to make it appear when this is happening and so on. So this I think this could be a some kind of educational content to get people started with some techniques, I think. So maybe we keep in contact and make out some date for it. Maybe not this year. So let's keep it in our mind, and I think I will contact you, Adam. I think when you are ready. So I have to prepare also something for it. I think a local monitoring system of the own machine, I think, is a good use case. I think we can make something out of this.
Definitely.
Not some fancy database stuff and so on. I think it's a good thing.
Let's do it.
Okay, good. So I will check out the date, because I think for next month we will have already someone. I contacted him yesterday. It's a first-time speaker, so let's see what he contributes then, and maybe on November, December, or January or so next year, we will do a live coding session, I think, together. That would be really cool.
Yeah, it sounds great to me. Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, definitely cool. Tips for guests, James Bryan. Yeah. Thank you very much, Matrix. I already had Doug Fink, I think, on for 2 talks this year. James Brunich, yeah, maybe. Let's see if he's up to something. But I think that would be very deep level talk, because he's very deep into the thing. So that's I think a level 400 talk. But let's see what if I can. If people would be down for this. Let's see. Yup, that's Brunich. That definitely. So I've been to the PowerShell core community calls, and he is always geeking out. So yeah, that's that's him. Good. Okay. Adam, let's keep in touch about the live coding session, and I will keep you posted.
Sounds great.
And see you all next month. And thank you for being here, Adam, also, and thank you for that everyone is here at such a later time. And I wish you all a nice day. And bye bye. See you next week. Next month. Not next week. Next month. Bye bye.
All right. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Bye bye.